Let me be clear. Screening tenants isn't just important, it's the difference between a stress-free rental experience and a nightmare. Skipping this step can cost you thousands in repairs and headaches. Now, tenant screening is more than just paperwork. It's your first line of defense to find trustworthy tenants who pay rent on time, take care of your property, and follow lease terms. Proper screening builds a foundation for a smooth rental journey. But here's the risk. If you don't screen thoroughly, you're gambling with your investment. One bad tenant can mean months of unpaid rent, legal battles, and costly repairs. Don't let a simple mistake ruin your real estate business. Let's dive into how to get tenant screening right and protect your property from day one. Now, before we dive in, let me tell you a few stories about skipping tenant screening, or rather, in general, an investor's mindset when they get desperate. So picture this, and if you have a rental property or you're thinking about getting a rental property, but particularly those investors who are listening to this or watching, you have a rental property, it's been months, maybe you're coming on to winter, you've been advertising for a few weeks, months, whatever it is, and you have a vacancy. And it's not like you don't have lots of people coming there. You have people, they're filling out applications, but the applications are just terrible. People with bad credit, maybe you're doing court screening, maybe you're not, but hopefully you are. And just the people who are there just aren't that great. There's a few that you might call borderline, the ones that seem okay, but your spidey sense, your gut feeling is just screaming, don't do it. And then when you actually look, maybe they haven't had a job for a long time, or maybe their rental references aren't that great, or maybe they don't have rental references. Either way, and I've been there, you basically say, well, I have vacancies, I have a mortgage payment coming out, I'm bleeding money. What's the worst that can happen? I'm just going to fill it. Those words are death in rental properties. I'm just going to fill it. So think about this, a month vacant versus thousands of dollars in damages, lost rent, and more. Now, I'm not saying it would happen, but if you keep gambling like that and you're not doing your proper paperwork, your proper due diligence, odds are eventually you're going to get burned. I mean, when you bought the property, hopefully you did due diligence, you checked your rent, you checked all these other things. If it was a multifamily property, you probably did environmental, you probably did a whole bunch of appraisals, lots of other things. Why wouldn't you do that with the most important thing, arguably, which is screening for a good tenant? So my lesson here is have patience. Okay, that's probably the most important thing. Okay, what are the steps to effective screening? Well, I would say, and we can break this down into about 3 sections, pre-screening, okay? I can't stress enough, pre-screening questions. And this usually happens when you're on the phone, maybe you're doing this on Facebook Messenger, whatever platform there is. Make sure that you're doing the pre-screening questions. And I would encourage you, if you can, do these on the phone while you're booking the appointment, okay? And you're gonna be asking things like, well, the ones that I like to ask is 3 questions. Where are you moving from? Why are you moving? And who are you moving with? Okay, where, why, and who. Where are you moving from tells you whether they are in a situation where they're moving from a worse neighborhood to a better neighborhood, or even, actually this is a worse thing, moving from a better neighborhood to a worse neighborhood. So if you have a rental property in a bad neighborhood and there's somebody coming from out of town and they have no idea what they're getting themselves into, maybe it's a C-class property where you don't want to be walking outside at night. No joke, that does happen. I own properties in those types of areas too. All that's going to happen is this person gets approved, they have great credit, that's fantastic. But the moment that something happens to them, or they get to your property, they move in and they see that a picture is not worth 1,000 words, they're just going to leave. And then you're going to have to make a very tough decision. Do I try to evict them? Do I go after them for the non-payment of rent, or do I just leave it? But either way, you've lost 1, 2, maybe 3 months of rent only because you didn't ask that question. Where are you coming from? When do you need it is pretty important too, because if they need it right away, maybe it's the 25th of the month and they need it, by the 30th, 31st of the month, pretty quick. I would say most responsible people are looking 5, 6, 7 weeks ahead. They have to find a place, they have to get secured, and then additionally, they're also going to go and give 1 month's notice to their current landlord. So when do you need it? If they need it within days, it could indicate either that they've been denied a bunch of times or that they're desperate. But in all fairness, it could just mean that they're very anxious to get off the family's couch. Maybe they moved here a few months ago and they've been staying with family and they just want a place right away. Either way, asking that question prompts a conversation. It gives you a little bit more detail. Who are you moving with? Okay, that's the third question. Who are you moving with? Oh, it's my partner and our 2 kids. And now you're thinking, great, we have a family that's moving in. Maybe they're going to stay 3 to 5 years. Oh, it's me and my roommate. Okay, also not bad, but not, in my opinion at least, not as stable as a family. Oh, it's me and my 5 kids. Again, not a bad thing, except now you're talking about a 2-bedroom condo where there's going to be noise violations. And really, they're going to be so jammed for space in there that maybe they're going to leave anyways halfway through the tenancy after leaving you with a paint job, right? So where are you moving? When do you need it? Who's moving with you? Super important. Second component, rental application. Make sure that your rental application is complete. Okay, whether you're using a paper application or an online application, and we can get into maybe another podcast episode. You should be including employment history, rental history, consent for background checks. Okay, background checks. What does that consent mean? Well, on your rental application, again, whether it's paper or not, at the very end of that rental application, you should have a little checkbox and a paragraph that allows the landlord something to the effect of, by me checking this checkbox and signing this rental application, I, enter your name here, allow the landlord to conduct background and credit checks for the purposes of approving me for a rental property. That then will allow you to fax that, email it, whatever it is. I'm showing my age. Although the rental agencies often still want things by fax, at least they are up here in Winnipeg, Canada. So that form then allows you to send that to a landlord and then they will release the information to you. Okay. It also allows you to conduct credit checks. And that's another point here. Make sure you conduct credit checks and background checks, okay? Credit checks, pretty self-explanatory. Up here we have TransUnion, we've got Equifax. If you're in the US, you can look at that as well. And what we're looking for credit checks, if you're in the US, you know, that FICO score. Up here in Canada, your Beacon score. You want to make sure that they have good credit, okay? Background checks could include and should include employment, past landlord references. And when I say past landlord references, I am intentionally saying in plural here. Yes, you want to check their current landlord, but what's more important is you want to check the previous landlord, okay? You check the previous landlord, they have nothing to lose, okay? Because the person doesn't live there anymore. So if you can get the previous landlord, they're going to really give you the honest truth. The current landlord, 50-50 chance, okay? So picture this. You're a landlord, you've got a nightmare tenant, okay, and get a reference check and, oh, they're finally going to leave. And you're asked, well, are they good tenants? Have they paid rent on time? Do they have bed bugs? Have they broken things? How many warning letters have you had? I mean, I believe in honesty and professionalism. I believe that you should answer honestly. Not everybody's going to do that. They're going to give you the answers you want to hear because they need to get rid of that tenant. So try to look and check with the previous landlord, okay? What else to look for? Red flags, okay? Prior evictions. How do you find prior evictions? Well, you can do what we do. You can just ask. We actually have a place on our rental application. Have you ever been evicted? People would tell the truth. Then they can have that with a story. Maybe it's a previous separation with an ex-partner. It could be a dispute with the landlord that they won the eviction, but it's because they weren't fixing anything. That might tell you that this tenant actually has pride in where they're living, okay? Poor credit history doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be bad tenants for you. But again, all of these things allows you to make an informed decision and have a conversation with that tenant. If a tenant knows they have poor credit, they're probably going to plead their case with you. Maybe they've had a bankruptcy, again, through a failed business with an ex-business partner, maybe an ex-spouse or partner through a bad breakup. That always happens, right? Check references. I mentioned that, but even employment references. How long have they been at their job? Okay. Did they list the net income or the gross income? Okay. There's a huge difference there, before taxes or after taxes. And some tenants unintentionally or intentionally are going to put their gross income on that rental application. So in summary for this podcast episode, we want to make sure, I just want to impress upon you that effective tenant screening can really prevent future issues, okay? You want to be consistent with your screening process. And when I say consistent, that means screen everybody the exact same way. Don't use your gut instinct, as much as I said gut instinct in previous podcast episodes. Don't use your gut instinct. Make sure that you're doing everything by the book. Everybody is screened the same way, because if you ever come up against fair housing laws or human rights and they say, well, you screened out my client, it's going to be a lawyer calling, you screened out my client because they have this, this, and this. And you can then say, no, everybody gets screened the exact same way. It doesn't matter their income source, everything else. And here's my consistent process. You can show that in court if you ever have to go to court to defend yourself. So to make tenant screening easier for you, I've created a comprehensive tenant screening checklist. Email us below, contact us. We'll be happy to send it to you, and you can then ensure you're covering all your bases and avoiding problem tenants from the start. So click the link in the show notes, in the description, and we'll get that out to you.